should be live. Couple drop frames. Let's check the connection. All right, couple drop frames. All right, looks like excellent connection. I can never say that every time. All right, so let's get started before OBS starts acting up. Welcome back, guys, to the server room, episode 65. You saw the title, setting up DHCP scope for PXE booting with WDS. Now, WDS stands for Windows Deployment Services or Windows Deployment Server. Now, I've done this video several times within the channel, and for some reason, I was trying to set up my WS within my small lab to PXE boot to test and vet a couple of images that I built within my MDT server, and my WDS and wasn't configured properly for PXE booting. So whatever. You know, I'm old and I'm gonna forget things, so I went back to my notes. I actually went into my channel, I looked it up, and I was watching my videos, but I never showed you guys how to configure it, like actually get the variables inside the scope. You're probably saying to yourself, what do you mean, Bernardo? All right, so I'm gonna show you. Give me one sec. Let's switch over real quick. And this is what I mean, right? What is this? Get out of here. The crap. All right, so this is what I mean. I think on some of my videos, I showed you guys this. You need this vendor class, right? PXE client, UEFI, x64 or x86, whatever. And I showed you what type of properties you need for each policy, right? But I never showed you guys how to get the vendor class. And no one called me out on that. No one. And I was looking at my channel and I was like, and I realized that I did not provide that type of information to you guys, and no one called me out on that. One, shame on you. Two, shame on me because I didn't show you guys that. And plus, I needed to get myself up and running and I couldn't do it because I didn't have my notes. So and then I was actually using Windows Server 22, which is a different approach of creating these vendor classes and creating the policies. So this is the reason why I'm doing this, to show you guys how to do it. So we're gonna go straight into it. All right, I'm inside my DC01. I'm going to open up my DHCP server. Let's open this guy up a little bit. All right. So there's two ways to do this. One way is the manual way, and another way is the PowerShell way. It's the simple way. There's commands. You add them, you're done, in and out. I'm going to give you the PowerShell commands that I'm going to use, but I'm going to show you real quick how to do it manually. So I'm going to, let's zoom in real quick. Okay. So I don't have any policies. Now, in here, no. So let's go inside this scope because this is the scope that I want to configure the policies. So scope options, I have the generic of the router, DNS server, DNS server, DNS domain name. This is basic stuff. For if I go to policies, I don't have any policies in here. In the past, I showed you guys, you know, I showed you guys my settings, but I didn't technically show you how to create the policies, and that's on me. I apologize on that, right? Creating a policy is super simple. If you right click, go to new policy, you're going to get the wizard, you give it a name, blah blah blah, right? And then from here you click next, you click on add, and vendor class equal value. Now you're probably saying to yourself, where are the values that you have always shown us? How do you get the values here? I was wondering the same thing, and I noticed that I did not show you guys how to do that. I think I did that on the first video that I showed you guys, but that was like many years ago. Now that I'm running 2022, it's a little different in creating this. I think on older server editions, you were able to add stuff here manually. Now with 2022, you're not able to do it. And I was like, damn, I didn't show you guys how to do this. So let's cancel that. If we go here, how to create a vendor class. So you want to right click on the IPv4, define a vendor class. You're going to get this. These are the default ones that you are going to get within your DHCP server. If you click on add, you will create a display name, a description, and you will give the binary or the ASC code here, and you're done. That is how you create a vendor class. Now, rather than doing this manually and messing up, because you got to make sure you add the correct information here to create your policies, we're going to do everything in PowerShell. All right, so let's close all this. And you saw I don't have any policies, I don't have any vendor class, so there's no magic that I'm doing behind the scenes for everything to work. So I'm going to minimize my DHCP console. I'm going to go to start. I'm going to type in ISE, and let's right click, and I'm going to run it as an administrator. I love PowerShell, and I will provide the commands for you guys if you need to configure this within your environment. Now, the whole point of configuring this is just setting up these DHCP policies so your devices that still support BIOS and UEFI are able to boot into your MDT server or your SCCM. Now, for your SCCM, you probably have PXE enabled distribution point, so you need to actually take that IP address and then assign it to one of the policies. Okay, so that's the whole reason if you want to actually configure your DHCP server to PXE boot when you have like a BIOS or UEFI system PXE booting, so you could image it. Now, blank. Now, I'm not going to type everything because I know I'm going to mess up really bad. So I'm actually going to copy and paste the commands, and we're going to go over it. And the reason why I'm going to copy and paste is because the variables for the vendor class, you have to exactly type them the way that I'm going to show you. And if you mess up, it's not going to work properly. So within here, I am going to send paste. It's going to paste everything into here, and we're going to go over it real quick, super quick. So, bam, hopefully you guys are able to hear me and see me. So, same command, right? We're using the PowerShell commandlet add-dhcpserver v4 class. v4 is IPv4. We're using the parameter of name. We're giving it this name. As you see on line 1, 3, and 5, we're using the same command, same parameters. The name is going to change. We're going to use another parameter of type. All three of them are going to use vendor. We're going to use another parameter or switch, whichever one you want to call it, switch or parameter, of data. And data, open and close quotations, are going to be this. Now for 64-bit, it's going to be arch 00007. For 86-bit, it is going to, a lot of people kind of fight for this. Why are you saying 86-bit? Well, Microsoft is stating 86-bit. Everyone knows it's 32-bit. We know this, but this is what is standard and written in books and documentation. Is always 86-bit. Hey, if you want to change it to 32, go for it, but still, the arch number would be 00006. And then for BIOS, 86-bit or 32-bit, 64, it will be off 00005 times. So again, I didn't have any of these vendors, so I am going to zoom out a little bit so I can see. I'm going to highlight all three of them, and I'm just going to run it, and you're done, right? So let's verify that. I'm going to just refresh this. I don't really need to do that. But if we right click on the IPv4 node within our DHCP console, and now we go into define vendor class, we're going to see we're going to see the 4 vendor classes, actually not 4, 3 vendor classes that we just created. You can click on edit, you can verify it, you can add a description if you want, but we're done with the vendor class. So what does this mean? Now that the vendor class is done, you're actually able to go inside your scope, and within your scope, go to policies, right click, new policy, and let's give the policy blah 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 blah. Give it a description, it's up to you. Click next, click on add, and now when you click on the drop down, you're going to see your stuff. Before that, you want to make sure you click on this, click on that, and then you click on add. Boom. This is what I've showed you in the past, right? But I've actually never showed you how to get the values, and that's on me. But no one's called me out, and actually called myself out, because I was trying to configure it myself, and I'm like, yo, wait a minute, how the hell I'm gonna add it? And I'm like scratching my head, and I actually had to go back many years ago when I actually did this. And when I looked at that video, I wasn't able to get the options, because during that time, that video was using an old server, and I was using server 2022. So a lot of stuff has changed, right? So you would continue, configure it, but we're not gonna do it that way, because again, that's long. You wanna do like all those policies manually? No, let's do PowerShell. Utilize PowerShell to make life easy for us. So zoom out of here, let's minimize this. Again, I'm gonna refresh the policies. I don't have anything here. I don't want you to think that, Bernardo, you got this is already done. No, we're gonna do this all live. So we ran these 3, I'm gonna delete this. And now we are going to create the policies. Once we create the policies, then we could go back and then configure the options within the policies. Now in the past, I told you guys that you need to configure option 60, option 66, option 67. Now, for this video, I am not going to configure option 60. And the reason why is because the WDS server doesn't live where the DHCP server lives. So I'm gonna say it again. The only time you configure option 60 within your scope policies is if your WDS services lives inside the same server that the DHCP server lives. Because my DHCP lives inside my DC01, and my WDS lives inside this server, which is my MDT, which is 132.140, I don't need to provide option 60 and provide the value of PXE client. Okay? Hopefully you guys understand that. So I'm gonna say it one more time, all right? If your WDS is on a different server, you don't need to do option 60. If your WDS lives where the DHCP server lives, you need to configure option 60 and provide a value of PXE client. Got it? Okay, boom. So let's go back inside DC01, and I am gonna cheat, and I already have my notes. I'm gonna copy everything. I am going to give you the PowerShell script, and all you guys have to do is make modifications in your end, depending on what scope you want to configure. And if you want to make life easy for you, hey, keep the same name and you're done. So let's go over what we're going to be doing right now. So right now we're going to be creating the policies for our DHCP server. So we're going to be using all 3 commands. 1, 3, and 5 is basically the same thing. The only thing that's going to change is the name and the condition. So for the first command, we're going to use the command of add-dhcpserver v4 policy with a switch of name. We're going to give it this name. The same thing with the 3 and 5. These are the names. For the scope, I'm hitting the same scope, 132.0. The condition is going to be an OR for all 3. The vendor class is going to equal, again, it's going to change up a little bit. It's going to be PXE client UEFI 64 with the asterisk at the end. The second one is going to be 86, and the last one is going to be BIOS x86 and x64. Now, this right here has to be the same. The way that you see it is the way that you need to configure it. So we're going to highlight all three of these. Actually, I could just do Control A, and then let's run it. Done. So let's go back inside our DHCP server, and let's refresh, and there goes our scopes. Done. 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 Now we need to go inside each of these policies and configure the options. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that manually. I mean, yeah, you are able to, right click, go to properties, go to options, find the ones that you want, which would be 66 and 67. Well, those are the ones that I want, and then type in the value and do all that stuff. You got to do that, 2, 4, 6 times. I don't want to do that. Let's do some PowerShell. PowerShell makes life easy. Want to do PowerShell. So let's go back in PowerShell. Let's delete this stuff. Control A, delete. Let's clean that down here. And we're going to actually do, let me copy my notes. Let's bring it here. And boom, we're actually going to do option 66 first. Option 66 is, I think, is option 66. I forgot what option 66 is. Let's go inside DHCP. Let's go to properties, options, and 66 is the boot server host name. That's what 66 is. So 66 is the boot server host name, and I think you could give it a DNS, a record. Like I could give it mdt.btnhd.edu. For me, I typically do IP address, but you are able to do a full qualified domain name there. And 67, which we're going to do pretty soon, would be a boot file name. Okay. Now you don't see 60 here, and the reason why you don't see 60 here is because the WDS server is not installed on the DHCP server. If it was, 60 would be here, and then we have to configure it. But we're going to take care of 60 and 67, and again, it's not configured, so we're going to do a little PowerShell. Okay, so these are the commands. Let's go over them before we run it. And for all three of them, 1, 3, and 5, we're going to use the command of set-dhcpserver v4 option value. For all three of them, we're going to be using the switch of scope ID. The scope ID is basically your scope. 132.0 is what I'm going to do. The policy name, whatever name you provided, make sure you change it. If you just want to be super lazy, the PowerShell script that I give you, hey, you could just use what I've used. Just make sure you change the scope ID. Make life easy for you. We're going to be using a switch of option ID, and it's going to be 066. Don't be slick and do 66. Make sure you say 066. A switch of value and the IP address. Done. That's it. All right, so let's zoom out of here. We're going to do a Control A to select all of them. We're going to run, and done. Let's open up DHCP. We're going to do a quick refresh, and I mean, you can pick any one. Let's pick the 86-bit one. Let's go to option, and I think we did 66, right? And if we go to 66, oh, 66, I just missed it. Bam, 66 is configured. How easy is that? Rather than right clicking, going to properties and doing it manually. All right, so the last one that I'm going to configure with you guys would be 67. And let's go back to PowerShell. Let's clean that up. Oops. Clean that up. And again, I don't like making mistakes. So type the stuff first. I mean, I'm able to type it with you guys, but I don't like, doing like set DHCP. Like, I don't want to waste your time, guys. Come on, we got to make, work smarter, not harder. Look at that. Boop. Done. That's it. We're done. So let's clean this up a little bit. let's go over the last command before we run it. Here we go. So for this one, again, we are going to use the same command that we use for setting up option 66, and you are able to do option 60 the same way, and I'm going to show you how to do option 60 if you guys need to do that. So we're going to use the same command, which is set-dhcpserver v4 option value. All three of them are going to be using the same switch. You're able to change your scope. For me, I'm using 132.0. Same command, same switch, policy name. Got to make sure whatever policy name you provided in your end, because you probably don't want to use what I'm using. But I think this is pretty standard. Make sure you type it here within the open and close quotations. We're using the option ID switch. Make sure you put 067. Don't put 67, 067. We're going to use a switch of value for all three of them. And then this is where it's going to change for all three of them. So for the x64, the UEFI, this is basically the path that we need to use. For 86-bit or 32-bit, sorry, don't yell at me. This is the path. And then last but not least, if you're doing or PXE booting devices that are still utilizing BIOS, this is basically, or you're going to use it. It's a little different here on this one compared to the last two. That's it. That's pretty easy, right? And highlight everything. I like to type everything up and make sure everything is written properly. And let's run this. Done. So let's go back inside DHCP. We do a quick refresh. Let's open up the BIOS one. Right click, properties. Let's go to option. And within option, we did what, 67? 67. There goes 67. 67 is configured. Done. Dude, how easy is that? PowerShell for the win. Now, for me, for my environment, I only have to do 67 and 66. Brain is not functioning. But you're probably saying to yourself, okay, I have WDS server installed where the DHCP server, because I can't, I don't have a lot of resources, so I got to try to have everything in one server. If that's the case, no problem. So this is what you can do. So if you need to configure for option 60, and just called brain fart. All right, yeah. So let's say we're going to be using these three commands. You already defined your scope ID. The policy name stays the same. The option ID is going to change. So let's zoom in real quick. Boom. Option ID is going to change. It's going to change to 60, right? And this is not going to work for me because I don't have option 60 to set up. But this is how you will configure it. Boom. So you did option ID for the switch 060. Make sure you keep that 0. Don't get slick and put 60. Now for the value, let's erase this. The value is going to be PXE, all caps, with a capital C, client. Done. Let's copy this. Let's highlight this. Delete, paste. And delete, paste. That's it. Done. We just set up option 60. That's it, guys. That's it. The only time you use this option is if your WDS lives where the DHCP server lives. Done. That's it. That is today's episode. That's about it. I can't do anything else. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I will provide the PowerShell script at my hub. You could grab a copy of that, and all you have to do is just make changes within the scope ID. If you don't like the policy name, make modifications to the policy names, and then you're done. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and I catch you guys next weekend. Peace out. All right, so I always forget how to end this. Are we done?